this will be part 2 from the Old Testament, and there are New Testament. So I make the 3 parts of my first Bible. My first Bible. Yeah, I already introduced of this. This writer or this one, yeah, illustrator. So Andrew Gisson and Sophie King, yeah, for Paragon. No, I put here first. That will be my attitude for them. Yeah, so I bring this one, and I. I'm sorry, where from the numbers here, where I just, where is the number? Solomon breaks his promise, David king of Israel. Where is the numbers? From the numbers, yeah, from the breast snake, numbers 4, 13, 14, 17, 21. Yeah, our creator created all the pretty beautiful flowers. This one is geranium, and this is the 백일홍. Those are all grow in my small garden. Yeah, this one is the lavender, and all the 백일홍. 100 days flowers are in Korean, and there are 4 o'clock. The small one already close its face here, small one, this one, but only one here left. Only the small flowers always, God send this message to us in the early morning, but this one already just withering now, but still God sends you. I love you. Yeah, this early morning, the morning glory live. Yeah, others make heart to you. God always busy to greeting you in the early morning. So if you wake up, you look around your place, there are lots of flowers and grass, trees, and even the air, we can breathing, and the water, yeah, fresh water make you alive, and make you fresh too. The breast snake, Numbers 13 through 14. Yeah, on and on the Israelites traveled toward Canaan. When they reached the border, they set up camp and selected 12 men to spy out the land. After 40 days, the 12 spies returned. They arrived carrying bunches of grapes, figs, and pomegranates. There is food plenty in Canaan, they said. It is a very fertile place, but the cities are defended like a fortress. If we try to take over the land, we will surely be defeated. The people were upset at this news. Oh, we ought to go back to Egypt, they cried. But Joshua and Caleb, 2 of the spies, disagreed. They thought the people should trust in God. He will protect us and give us this land, they said, but no one would listen to them. This made God angry. Because you will not trust me, he told them, you will wander in the desert for 40 years. Only Joshua and Caleb will enter Canaan. The Israelites didn't like what God had said. They decided to fight the Canaanites, but they were easily defeated. The people became angry. They rounded on Moses. What gives you and Aaron the right to be our leaders? They asked. Moses replied, let each of our 12 tribes choose a leader and carve his name on an almond branch. Tonight, the branches will be left in God's tent. God will choose one man to lead his people. Next morning, when the branches were checked, only Aaron's branch had flowered and produced almonds. God had chosen him to be the new leader. Yeah. For a while, things got better, but some years later, when Aaron died, and people starting complaining all over again, why did we leave Egypt? Egypt, we are tired of eating manna. There's no proper food or water here. They moaned. This time, God sent poisonous snakes to punish the rebels. They spread into the camp. People were frightened of them with their poisonous fangs. With their poisonous fangs, many people got fevers from the bites. Others died. Yeah. Like this, the Israelites hurried to Moses. They pleaded with him to ask God to rid them of the snakes. We know we have been wrong to speak against God. Please ask him to take these snakes away. So Moses prayed to God. God told him what to do. Make a brass snake and fix it to a pole. Said God, anyone who is bitten by a snake need only look at this pole to be made better again. Moses did as God asked him. He made the brass snake and put it on a pole. Everyone who was bitten by a snake, but who obeyed God and looked at the brass snake, was made well again. Once again, they had put their trust in God. The walls of Jericho, Joshua 1 through 6. At last, 40 years in desert ended, and when Moses died, God chose Joshua. God chose Joshua to be the new leader. Joshua was worried about being the Israelites leader, but God told him that he would be with him. Joshua sent 2 spies to Jericho from their camp on the far side of the Jordan River. The city had walls all around it. A woman called Rahab lived in a house on the city wall. She sheltered the men for the night, but the king of Jericho heard about the spies. He sent his soldiers to capture them. Rahab was too clever for the king. She hid the spies on her roof, and when questioned, told the soldiers then they had left. Rahab knew that God wanted the Israelites to have Canaan. We are all afraid, she told the spies. Promise me that you will look after my family and keep us safe when you take this city. And we promise to look after you if you promise to tell no one what we have been doing here, said the man. When we capture the city, you must tie a red cord to the window so we know not to attack you. Call your family together, and we promise to keep you all safe. Rahab promised to keep the men spying a secret. Then she let them down from her window on a rope, and they went back to tell Joshua what they had found out. Yeah. Soon afterward, the Israelites got ready to cross the Jordan River to capture Jericho, but the water level in the river was high, making it too dangerous to cross. However, the priests went ahead carrying the box with God's laws in it. As soon as they stepped into the river, the banks collapsed upstream, damming the water. Now the people at Jericho could cross the riverbed easily. Yeah. Next, the Israelites took 12 stones from the middle of the riverbed. They piled them up. On the bank as a sign of God's help in bringing them into Canaan. Then the river flooded through again. The Israelites set up camp outside the walls of Jericho and celebrated Passover. The walls of Jericho were high. Yeah, Jericho were high and thick. Strong gates meant that no one could get in or out. How could the Israelites capture such a well-defended city? But God told Joshua what to do. Each day for 6 days, you must march around the city walls. Place 7 priests at the front. The man with my box of laws must go next. The priests should have trumpets made of ram's horns, and they are to blow them as you might march. Everyone else must remain quiet. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times. Then the priests must play on long note on their trumpets. Yeah, boom, and all the people are to shout loudly. The walls of Jericho will fall, and the city will be yours. Yeah, the Israelites. Yeah. The Israelites did as God had instructed them. Each day they marched around the walls of Jericho, and each night they returned to their camp. On the 7th day, they marched around the city 7 times. On the 7th time, the priests sounded the trumpets. Joshua gave the order for everyone to shout. The Israelites shouted as loudly as they could. The walls of Jericho came crashing down, and they captured the city. Only Rahab and her family were saved. Yes, the city was burnt to the ground. This was the first of Joshua's victories in Canaan. The Israelites slowly conquered the promised land with Joshua as their leader. Yeah, the strong Samson. Judges 13 through 16. A long time passed, but once again, or after Joshua died, the Israelites forgot about God. He was angry that they had forgotten about him yet again. To punish them, he allowed the Philistines to rule over the Israelites for 40 years. An Israelite called Manoah and his wife longed for God to send them a new leader, and even more than that, they longed to have a child of their own. One day God sent an angel to Manoah. The angel told him that he and his wife would have a son who would help protect the Israelites from their enemies. When the boy was born, he was called Samson, as a sign that Samson belonged to God. His parents never cut his hair. Samson grew up to be very strong. He was so strong that he even killed a lion with his bare hands. Yeah, with his bare hands. From then on, Samson knew that God wanted him to use his amazing strength against the Philistines, and that That is what he did. He destroyed their crops and once killed thousands of them using only a donkey's jawbone as a weapon. When the Philistines tried to capture Samson, he always got away. But the Philistines were determined to get their revenge on him. Yeah, their chance soon came. Samson had fallen in love with a beautiful Philistine girl called Delilah. When the 5 Philistine kings heard this, they went to speak to her. They told her they would give her 1,100 silver coins if she would make Samson tell her the secret of his strength. Delilah, uh, Delilah, Delilah agreed, but Delilah could not find out the truth behind Samson's strength because each time she asked him, he gave a different reason. If you tie me up with new bowstrings, I'll be as big as anybody else, he said, and then use brand new rope to tie me up, weave my hair into a loom. Delilah tried everything that Samson told her, but nothing he did weakened him. Yeah, Delilah and uh, Delilah nagged Samson to tell her the truth. Tell her the truth. If you won't tell me, you don't really love me, she said. But Samson did love Delilah, and in the end, he told her his secret. My hair is a sign that I belong to God. I would lose all my strength if it were cut. Delilah waited for Samson to fall asleep that night and then summoned a man to cut off his hair. Immediately, Samson lost all his strength. The Philistines came and took him prisoner. Yeah, came and took him prisoner. The Samson was blinded, chained, and taken. Yeah, and taken to a prison in Gaza. He was made to work very hard, but gradually Samson's hair grew back again. One day, the Palestinians held a feast in honor of Dagon, their god. Honor of Dagon, their god. Yeah. Oh, they brought Samson from the prison to the temple. The temple was crowded with people, and they were all laughing at him and mocking him. Samson prayed to God to give him strength. Then he reached out and pushed against the 2 pillars supporting the temple. He pushed with all his might, and suddenly the temple collapsed. Everyone inside was killed. Samson had been the leader of his people for 20 years. The destruction of the Philistines' temple was his last act against the enemies of Israel. Yeah. Naomi and Ruth. Ruth 1 through 4. Many years past, Israel suffered a terrible famine. One man from Bethlehem called Elimelech decided to leave Israel with his wife Naomi and their 2 sons and live in Moab until the famine was over. Sadly, it wasn't long before Elimelech died. The sons grew up and married 2 Moabite girls, Orpah and Ruth. However, 10 years later, both of the sons died too. Naomi felt very lonely in a strange country without her husband or sons. She decided it was time to return to her homeland. Orpah and Ruth set off with her, But when they reached the border, Naomi turned to them and said, "You must go back to your people." Unhappily, Orpah agreed, but Ruth refused, saying, "I'm coming with you. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God." So Naomi and Ruth continued on their journey. When they reached the town of Bethlehem, it was harvest time. They were very poor, so every day Ruth walked behind the workers in the fields, collecting any wheat that had been dropped. Yeah, that had been dropped. She then exchanged the wheat for a little money. It was hard. Yeah, it was hard work, and the hours were very long. But they 이렇게 되죠? 아까는 잘 됐는데 왜 이렇게 되지? Yeah, but they chanced Ruth had chosen to work in the fields of a rich man called Boaz, who was one of Naomi's relatives. One day, when Boaz came to see how the workers were getting on, he saw Ruth and asked about her. As soon as he found out that she was a relative of Naomi's, he told her that she was always welcome to work in his field. Ruth rushed to tell Naomi what Boaz had said. Naomi was delighted. She wanted to find the husband for Ruth, and she knew that Boaz was a good man. In Israel at that time, the nearest relative would take care of a man's family. If he died, Naomi wanted to claim this right, so she sent Ruth to find out if Boaz would marry her. Boaz agreed, and Naomi was very pleased. Later, Ruth and Boaz had a son, so it was that Ruth who trusted God and who had loved and helped her mother-in-law was to become the great grandmother of Israel's greatest king, David. And Hannah's special son. 1 Samuel 1 and 8 through 10, 15 through 16. Hannah was an Israelite. She lived near Jerusalem. Hannah was sad because she had no children. One day, Hannah could bear it no longer. She went to pray to God. She prayed silently, but she didn't realize that she was mouthing the words to her prayer. Nearby, a priest called Eli was watching her. He could see her lips moving, but no sound was coming from them. He thought she was drunk. He was worried and went over to talk to her. "I'm not drunk," said Hannah, "but I am very sad because I do not have a child of my own." When Eli heard this, he said, "May God give you the child you long for." Sometime later, God answered Hannah's prayers and gave her a child, a son called Samuel. When Samuel was old enough, Hannah took him back to Eli. "This is the son God gave me," she said. "Now I'm giving him back to God." So Samuel grew up loving and obeying God. Many years passed. In time, God chose Samuel to lead the Israelites. Samuel was a good, kind man. He loved God and he loved the good, honest way of life of his people. But Samuel's two sons were not like him at all. They were greedy and only interested in money. And the Israelites did not want either of Samuel's sons to lead them when Samuel died. "We need a king," they told Samuel. This made Samuel unhappy. God was the only true leader. Samuel didn't know what to do. He prayed to God for help. God told Samuel to tell the people what the king would be like. He will make your sons fight in his armies. And Samuel, he will force you to work the land for him, and he will take the best crops. You will become his slaves. But the people didn't listen. We want a king, they insisted. When Samuel told God that the Israelites wouldn't change their minds, God told Samuel to give them what they wanted. Give them their king, he said. Yeah. Soon afterward, Samuel met a tall, good-looking man called Saul. God had told Samuel where and when he would meet his chosen king. So he was not surprised when he heard God say that Saul was to be the first king of Israel. The next day at dawn, Samuel poured oil onto Saul's head, as was the tradition. It was a sign that he was the chosen one. Saul was a good and popular king at first. His people won many battles under his leadership. Yeah, here. But soon Saul became proud. He began to think less of God and more of himself. God told Samuel that he must find a new king. He told him to go to Bethlehem, as he had chosen one of the sons of a man called Jesse to become the next king. When Samuel arrived, he invited Jesse and all his family to a feast. He spoke to the sons in turn each time. He thought, surely this handsome man must be the chosen one. But each time God said, no, it is not important or what a person looks like, but what they are like inside. Oh yeah, this one is important. No, it is not important what a person looks like, but what they are like inside. One by one, God rejected the 7 sons standing before Samuel. Samuel was puzzled. He asked Jesse, if he had any more sons? Yes, said Jesus. There is the youngest son, David, but he is tending the sheep in the fields. Samuel asked Jesus to send for him. As soon as David walked in, God spoke to Samuel, saying, this is the chosen one. Samuel anointed David, and from that time on, David knew that God was always with him. David and Goliath. 1 Samuel 16 through 17. Every day, David became stronger and wiser. He continued to look after his father's sheep. Wild animals often attacked the flock. David learned to be skillful with a slingshot to scare away bears and lions. Very soon, he was an expert. Yeah, but David learned the other skills too, to while away the time as he tended his sheep. David practiced playing his harp. He played beautifully, and the news of his skills spread far across the land. Meanwhile, Saul was becoming more and more distant from God. He had terrible moods, and an evil spirit tormented him. Worse still, Samuel no longer visited him at his palace. Yeah, one of Saul's attendants thought that soothing harp music might calm the king. David was sent for, and whenever he played the harp for Saul, the king became calmer and happier. Once the king felt better, David thought he would return home. But the day there comes some worrying news. The Philistines had set up camp on one side of the valley of Elah. Only a small stream separated them from the Israelite army who were on the other side. In the Palestine army, there was a huge man called Goliath. He was almost 10 feet tall and much stronger than any ox. Goliath strutted up and down day after day, challenging the Israelites to fight him. Yeah, was the champion of Israel. He shouted, "Send him to fight me. If he kills me, we will be your slaves. If I kill him, you will be ours." But no one stepped forward to take up Goliath's challenging. They were all too scared. Now David had three brothers in Saul's army. One day, when he was taking food to them, he heard Goliath's towns across the valley. David felt angry. Who is he to challenge the army of the living God? He asked. I will fight them. The Israelites looked at the small boy in front of them and laughed. How could a boy his size defeat a giant of a man like Goliath? But Saul heard about David's offer and sent for him. The God protects me when I fight lions. When I fight lions and bears to keep my father's sheep safe. David told him, so he will protect me now. At last, Saul agreed to David's request. He gave him his own armor and a sword, but it was all too heavy for David. He could hardly move. I must use the weapons I know best, he said. He took off the armor and instead picked up his sling. He went down to the stream and chose 5 smooth stones. Then he went out to meet Goliath. When Goliath saw David coming toward him, he laughed. What sort of champion is this? He sneered at the Israelites. But David went bravely forward. I come in the name of the God of Israel. He said, he is a stronger champion than you. He is a stronger champion than you, he said. I come in name of the God of Israel. I come in the name of the God of Israel. David went bravely forward. But then David took a stone from his bag, placed it into his sling, and took aim. The stone hurtled toward Goliath. It struck him on the forehead so hard that it broke his skull. Goliath fell down dead. When the Philistines saw that Goliath was dead, they were afraid and ran into the hills. The joyful Israelites chased after them. Now they had won, and now they had the Philistines' land. So famous story, so favorite story. David, king of Israel. 2 Samuel 1-6, 11 through 19, 1 Kings 1. Years later, after Saul died, David became king of Israel. But life was not easy for him. People who had supported Saul did not support David. The Philistines too were always waiting for a chance to return to the country. More than anything, David wanted to conquer the city of Jerusalem so that he could bring the sacred box of God's law there. When at last he did capture the city, they celebrated with music and dancing. There were wonderful feasts and gifts were offered to God. Best of all, David made Jerusalem God's city. Yeah, made Jerusalem God's city. And David, the king of Israel, was a great leader who was faithful to God. His people loved him and respected him, but David was not perfect. He fell in love with a married woman called Bathsheba. So David made sure that her soldier's husband was killed in a battle. God knew what David had done. He let him know through the prophet Nathan. David was very sorry. He prayed to God to forgive him. God knew that David was truly sorry. He told David that he would remain king, but Solomon, his son, would have the task of building God's temple. King David, alone and upset, drew up plans for the temple. He wrote music that would be used there to praise God. A while later, David married Bathsheba. Bathsheba, his kingdom remained strong, although trouble was always nearby. Yeah. And another of David's son, and Absalom wanted to be king. He was wanted to be king. He was a handsome man and popular too. He plotted to take his father's throne and marched on Jerusalem. And when David saw what was happening, he ran away. But then he got his army together and fought against his son. David's army defeated Absalom, who tried to run away, but some of David's soldiers captured him. Ignoring David's plea to save Absalom's life, the soldiers killed him. David mourned his son greatly. Over and over again, he cried out that he wished he had died in Absalom's place. Now Absalom was dead. Adoniah, David's next son, decided that he would claim the throne for himself, but King David refused, saying that Solomon would succeed him. David told Nathan, the prophet, Benaiah, and Zadok, the priest, to take Solomon to Gihon. There they were to anoint him as king. The wise King Solomon. 1 Kings 1 through 4 and 10. Everyone was very happy when Solomon became king, but before King David died, he spoke to his son. He told him to be a strong king, to trust in God, and to follow his commands. Then God will keep his promise that my descendants will rule this nation. He said. With that, Solomon sent away all his father's old enemies. Then he set out new districts throughout his kingdom. For many years, Solomon ruled over the kingdom of Israel. He loved God dearly, and he became one of Israel's most famous kings. This was a time of peace for God's people. One night, one night God appeared to Solomon in a dream. What do you need from me? God asked him. I'm very young to rule over so many people. Solomon replied thoughtfully, I need wisdom to make the right and true decisions. Please give me wisdom. Please give me wisdom. Solomon had not asked for things for himself, and this pleased God. I will give you more wisdom and understanding than anyone has ever had before, he said. God kept his promise, and Solomon grew to be a great and wise king. But Solomon never forgot that his wisdom came from God. One day, two women asked Solomon to judge who was the real mother of a baby. Solomon thought and thought. Then he suggested that the baby should be cut in half so that each woman could share the baby between them. The false mother agreed, but the real mother was horrified and said, "No, no, no, no." At once, King Solomon knew who the real mother was. The stories of Solomon's wisdom spread far and wide across the world to other lands. Soon the stories reached the land of Suba. When the queen of Suba heard about Solomon, she decided to see for herself how wise he was. She thought up a list of very difficult questions that only the wisest of men could answer. Then she gathered together her finest gold and spice, and set out for Jerusalem. Everyone stopped to look as the queen entered Jerusalem. The queen went to see Solomon. She asked all her questions, and Solomon answered them easily. Then the queen knew that Solomon was indeed a wise man. I can see that God has given his people a wise king because he loves them so much, she said. The Golden Temple. 1 King 5, 8, 5, 8. Kings. 1 Kings 5 through 8. Solomon started to build a magnificent temple for God during the fourth year of his reign. Magnificent temple. Build a magnificent temple for God. The foundations and the walls were built from beautiful large stones and high-quality woods such as cedar. A lot of cedar wood was needed. 힘드네요. And the best cedars grew in Tyre. So Solomon wrote to his father's friend, King Hiram of Tyre, asking him for cedar wood from the forests of Lebanon. King Hiram was happy to supply the wood. His servants cut down the trees, and the wood was floated down the coast to where Solomon's servants could collect it. In exchange for the wood, Solomon sent the king wheat and olive oil. Thousands of men worked on the temple, and it took 7 years to build. Everyone wanted it to be a wonderful place where God's special box containing the laws would be kept. Yeah. The Golden Temple. For the Golden Temple here, there. At last, the temple was finished. It was magnificent. Outside, there were courtyards where people could offer God their gifts. Inside, at the back, was a windowless square with flowers and walls covered in gold. This innermost room was to hold the box containing God's laws. It was decorated with carved figures of winged creatures, palm trees, and flowers, all covered in gold. The outer room, too, gleamed with gold. It had a gold altar and 10 gold lampstands. All the furnishing in the temple were made of gold. Tables, cups, bowls, and even the pans that were used to carry coal to the fires. King Solomon had made the temple as beautiful as he could. The Solomon decided to hold a very special ceremony. The priests made offerings, and the cabinet chest containing God's laws was carried from its tent into the temple's innermost room. At that moment, the temple was completely filled with a dazzling light. Dazzling light, the presence of God. King Solomon prayed, Lord, God of Israel, hear the prayers of your people. Listen to them in your home in heaven and help them always. Help them always. Then Solomon turned to his people. You must be true to God. You must obey his commandments. When the ceremony was over, a great feast was held. The celebrations lasted for a whole week. Yeah, celebration 그렇게. Solomon breaks his promise. 1 Kings 11. Israel prospered during Solomon's reign. He built many beautiful palaces and great cities developed. People had to give taxes to the king to pay for the buildings, and money poured into Solomon's coffers. Now men had to work for the king and not on their own farms. Solomon spent more money than he had. Whenever he got into debt, he made the people pay heavier tax. Many Israelites were poor while Solomon was king. Solomon also married many foreign princesses. The princes worshipped their own gods. It helped to keep peace between the lands, and it was good for trade. But it also brought many problems. Over many years, Solomon was persuaded by his wives to worship their foreign gods. He even built temples to their gods rather than teaching them to know about the true God. He did not remain faithful to God as his father had. This made God sad. He wanted Solomon to follow him as his father David had done. His father David had done. God spoke to Solomon, the king of Israel will be taken from you, a son, since you have not followed my commands, he said. And as time passed, God's words come true. Elijah's battle. 1 King 12:16 through 19. When Solomon died, Israel became a divided kingdom. Judah almost come. 10 minutes. 많이 힘드네. Judah in the south followed Rehoboam, Solomon's son, but people living in the north followed Nebat's son, Jeroboam. None of the kings who succeeded Jeroboam were faithful to God. One such king was Ahab, the son of Omri. Ahab married a woman called Jezebel, and it soon became clear that the real ruler of Israel was Queen Jezebel. She was eager to stop people from worshiping God. Instead, she worshipped her god Baal. Jezebel had also killed many of God's prophets. But one prophet, Elijah, was not scared of telling everyone God's message. One day, Elijah went to see King Ahab. He told Ahab that there would be no rain in Israel until God said so. No rain fell, and everything became parched and dry. Jezebel and Ahab prayed to Baal, but still no rain came. The king and queen were angry with Elijah. God knew that Elijah was in danger. He told him to go to a place of safety on the other side of the Jordan River. And for 3 years, Elijah stayed in the safe place. It didn't rain once in all that time, but God watched over Elijah, sending ravens to bring him food and telling him where to find people who would look after him. Then one day, God told Elijah to go back to Ahab. When Ahab saw Elijah, he was angry. "You have brought us nothing but trouble," said Ahab. "Why have you come back?" Yeah, "You have turned your back on God," replied Elijah. "Send for your people and the prophets of Baal. Tell them to meet me on Mount Carmel." Ahab sent for the people as Elijah had requested, and when everyone was gathered together, Elijah said, "It is time to see who is the real God." Then Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal. "Offer a bull to Baal, and I will offer one to God. The real God will be the one who sends fire to burn up the offering." The priests of Baal set to work. They made an altar and laid a bull on it. Then they prayed for their God to send fire, but nothing happened. Yeah, nothing happened. Then Elijah built his altar with a ditch around it. He told the people He told the people to bring water to fill the ditch. Then he placed his bowl on the wood and poured the water over everything. Everyone was amazed. Surely any fire that would would quickly be put out by all the water. Elijah began to pray. God sent fire down, and even though the wood was soaked, it burst into flames. Yeah. The people cried, "The Lord is the only God." Then Elijah prayed to God to send rain. Soon the skies darkened. A strong wind blew and rain fell. Elijah was happy, but Queen Jezebel was furious. She vowed to kill Elijah in revenge for what he had done. Yeah. When Elijah heard about the queen's vow, he ran away, arriving at last at Mount Sinai. Suddenly he heard God's voice. "Why are you here, Elijah?" he asked. "I am the only one of your prophets left." Elijah said, "Now they want to kill me too. There are others who are loyal to me." "You must go back," God said. "Your work for me is not finished yet." Yeah. Isaiah's promise. Isaiah 9 and 11. 100 years after Elijah died. Life once again became difficult for God's people. The northern area of Israel had fallen to the Assyrians, who were a cruel people. They marched the people they captured from their homeland. Only the weakest were left behind in Israel. Assyria was also threatening the southern kingdom of Judah, but God sent the prophet Isaiah to help King Hezekiah to save Jerusalem. The city was safe for a time, but Isaiah warned the king, "Remember, as long as you obey God's law, Jerusalem will not fall." Isaiah also gave the people a special promise. "Unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be called the mighty God, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. There will be no end to his rule and peace." Everything that Isaiah promised came true. Daniel in the lion pit. Daniel 1:6. The people continued to disobey God. So he decided to allow Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, to march into Jerusalem and gain control of Judah. Many people were taken prisoner, including a group of young men from Jerusalem. Daniel was one of them. Yeah. Next, the king told his chief official to pick out from this group all the young men from noble families who could be trained to serve in his royal court. Daniel and his 3 best friends were among those chosen. The young men were taken to Babylon, where they were treated well. They were taught to speak, read, and written in the Babylonian language. The years passed. Daniel became very wise, and he always remembered to stay loyal to God. Then one year, Babylon was captured by the Persians. Darius, the Persian leader, became king. Darius chose Daniel to be one of his chief advisors. Daniel served him faithfully, but the king's other advisors became jealous of his popularity with the king. They decided to hatch a plot to get rid of Daniel. They found out that he prayed to God every day. They knew that if they wanted to get Daniel into trouble, it would have to be something to do with his religion. Yeah. So they persuaded Darius to make a new law. This law said that for 30 days, no one was to ask for anything from any god or any human being except from the king himself. If anyone broke the law, they would be thrown to the lions. Daniel heard about the law, but he was determined to stay loyal to God. He carried on praying 3 times a day. His enemies were pleased. Their plan had worked, and they quickly went to the king to tell them. The king was upset because Daniel had broken the law. There was nothing he could do to help him. So at sunset, Daniel was thrown into the lion pit. The lions looked very hungry. Yeah, you see here. Yeah, your favorite history. Your favorite, story. I hope your God keeps you safe. I will show you one more time like this. Yeah, I hope your God keeps you safe, so said the king. Although the long night, the king was deeply unhappy. He couldn't eat or sleep. He didn't want to listen to soothing music. All he could do was think about poor Daniel in the lion pit. In the morning, Darius hurried down to the pit. He didn't expect to find Daniel alive. He shouted into the pit, "Has your God saved you from the lions?" He was amazed to hear Daniel's voice saying, "Yes, your majesty, God has kept me safe." He knew I was innocent. I have done nothing wrong. Yeah, I have done nothing wrong. Immediately, Darius had Daniel set free. Then he ordered that the man who had plotted against him be thrown to the lions instead. Yeah, thrown to the lions instead. King Darius made a new, very special law. Everyone in my kingdom must fear and respect Daniel's God. He is the one true living God. Yeah, a whale of a tail. Jonah 1-4. Not all prophets were willing to say yes to God's call to them. After all, being a messenger for God could be very dangerous. Very dangerous. One such prophet was Jonah. One day God told Jonah that he had a message for him to give to the people of Nineveh, the capital city of Assyria. The Assyrians were the enemies of God's people, and they were a cruel and wicked people. Tell the king and the people of Nineveh that the city will be destroyed in 40 days' time, said God. Tell them I know about their wicked ways and they must stop now. But Jonah didn't want to go. I'm going to look stupid, he thought. The Assyrians are cruel, but God is loving and forgiving. I know he will forgive them. He will not destroy Nineveh. So instead, Jonah went to Joppa. He got on a boat that was going to Spain and settled down to sleep. Yeah, God was angry that Jonah had disobeyed him. And as soon as the boat set sail, he sent a huge storm. The boat tossed about on the waves. The sailors were terrified. They felt sure that the boat would sink in such a storm. They cried out to their gods to save them. Yeah, save, save, like this. Jonah stayed inside the fish for 3 whole days. He was very sorry for disobeying God and told him so in his prayers. God listened to Jonah's prayers. He knew that Jonah was sorry, and so he made the big fish throw him up onto a beach. Yeah. Once again, God told Jonah to take his message to Nineveh. This time Jonah did as he was told. He went straight to Nineveh and told the people what God would do if they didn't change their wicked ways. Let me check. Yeah. My grandkids arrival or not like that. Done at this time Jonah did as he was told. He went straight to Nineveh and told the people what God would do if they didn't change their wicked ways. They listened to Jonah and immediately stopped their wickedness. When God saw how the people had changed, he did not destroy their city. Jonah felt angry. I knew you would do that. He complained to God, I wish I were dead. And with that, Jonah went to sit outside the city in the scorching sun. But God made a big shady plant grow to protect Jonah from the fierce heat of the sun. Jonah began to feel less miserable. And the next day, God sent a little worm to nibble at the plant's roots, and soon the plant died. The sun started beating down on Jonah yet again. I was glad of that plant, said Jonah crossly. I'm sorry it had died. You are sorry that the plant has died. A plant has died, but you didn't grow it or try to keep it alive, said God. Well, how do you think I feel about the people of Nineveh? The innocent children, the animals, I gave them all life. animal까지. The animals, children. Now Jonah understood how much God loved and cared for the world he created. Yeah. God's promise, Micah 5. Over the years, there were many times when God's people forgot to obey his laws. His prophets continually warned what would happen if they didn't change their ways. But some prophets told the people about the wonderful things God had planned for the future. Micah, the prophet, told the people about God's special promise. He told them that God was going to send a ruler for Israel. This special ruler would come from the town of Bethlehem. He will be the King of peace. He will rule over his people with the majesty of God, said Micah. His fame will reach beyond Israel. People all over the world will recognize his greatness. The prophet was telling the people about Jesus. Jesus' story is told in the New Testament. Yay! The Old Testament, the end of the Old Testament. Thank you. There are New Testament will be start here. So next time I will read this one. Also, this one is the thick, but I will try to read all of this. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Only 2 times. Before the first one is almost 2 hours. I didn't know that. So I quickly go on. Maybe 1 more hour. I don't know.